Okay, welcome everybody to the Wednesday, January 15th, 2025 regular scheduled meeting of the Town of Eastham Planning Board at 5 p.m. This meeting will be live broadcast on local access channel 18 and live streaming on the town's website, www.eastham-ma.gov. Tonight we have several items on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is a case number PB 2025-01 for 300 Campground Road and 65 Wagon Wheel Road. The board is being requested to endorse an approval not required an ANR plan, thereby attesting that the proposed reconfiguration of the lots as shown on the plan does not constitute a subdivision of the property. In this manner, the applicants are seeking to convey in a equal area land swap portions of the existing land labeled lot 23-A and lot 23-B as shown on the accompanying site plan. For the members of the public, an ANR is an approval not required. So what that means is that the planning board is not blessing this plan in any way, whether it be to configuration, whether it be to buildability or any other aspect of the site. We have received no information on the site other than the fact that the swap of the land will occur on the map. So I want the public to be aware that the planning board, by signing this map, is not blessing or doing any action other than approving the approval not required plan. Paul, are you there?
I am, yes.
Okay. I know we're all supposed to sign this. Are you going to send it down to me to sign, or is it okay if I don't sign this one?
No, it just needs to be signed by a majority of the board,
Okay.
So that's fine.
Okay. As this is not a public hearing, and as this is not required as far as a formal planning board action, do we need a motion, Paul, or can we just authorize signature of the plan?
Yeah, so the motion would be to endorse the ANR, and the applicant is here. I don't know if you want to.
Sure, I'll say
You came here if you want to, came all the way here if you want to say anything.
Absolutely. I'll say a couple of words. Lynn Rowan is joining us via Zoom. My name is Jeff Cronin from Ryder and Wilcox. I'm representing Lynn, who's the trustee of the 2018 Sterling and Marjorie Shano Family Trust. I'm here to request that endorsement of the approval not required for an equal area land swap between 300 Campground Road and 65 Wagon Wheel Road. Both properties are in common ownership. This land swap would be between, I can go into the, the lots and the parcels. They're situated next to each other. Basically, we're swapping a piece of this land for this land, and it just kind of makes sense. Both proposed lots will have more than the adequate frontage. This land swap makes a lot of sense because as it will provide a more usable and sensible side yard for both properties. Right now, it's a two triangular pieces that reach to both roads, and we're basically trying to get rid of one little spot for another little spot, so they each have a yard, and they'll have frontage on Campground for 300, and 65 will have all their frontage on Wagon Wheel. Please feel free to ask any questions.
Okay, just as a point of information on your letter dated December 31st, 2024, it says it's being submitted to the town of Wellfleet. It's actually the town of Eastham. I'm sure you're aware of that.
I apologize for that.
And secondly, not that we get into it, but I assume you've checked and there's going to be no issue with respect to existing septics or any of that stuff in terms of this land swap from one lot to another.
I show both septic systems on there, and I've definitely made sure that our setbacks to the lines are good.
Fine. Okay, board members, do you have any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve the application for an ANR for case number PB 2025-01?
So move.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I guess we should go down the list. Dave Hobbs?
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Rob,
Rob's not
Yeah.
here.
he's not here, okay. Brian Early,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
and we have a new member, David,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna move along. We're gonna call case number PB.
Hold it, Dan.
Just 5-minute pause, just because we have to actually sign the.
Okay, No
here in a
problem.
second.
go ahead, and I won't open until you tell me.
Paul, do you need me to stop in the town hall and sign, or do you have enough?
We have enough for tonight. We will need your signature on another form. So when you get back
Okay, thank you.
on another matter.
Yep.
Comes with its own.
Shurtleff.
Dan, we're all set if you want to.
Okay, let's do it. So I'm gonna call case number PB 2024-14 for 55 Shurtleff Road, as shown on map 10, parcel 234, Seaman Cottages LLC. Owner Christine Seaman, Robert Forsythe, and Carol Forsythe. Applicants seek site plan approval, special permit pursuant to Eastham zoning bylaw section 10.2, site plan approval commercial for the removal of an existing dwelling and construction of a new dwelling and attached garage, where portions of the new dwelling will be used for storage of materials and supplies and for maintenance services activities associated with the commercial cottage colony operation located on the same property as the proposed dwelling. The project requires special approval permit due to the construction of exterior alteration of any commercial, retail, and/or mixed-use structure, and due to the changing pattern of the pedestrian and vehicular movements within the site and in relation to the streets. Now, Paul, this was on the agenda for last month, but we didn't have a meeting last month. Is that correct? So can everybody sit on this?
Yes, this is the opening of the hearing.
Opening of the hearing. Okay. Now, as my understanding, since it's commercial, we need a 5 out of 7. Is that correct?
Correct.
Super majority. Okay. All right. Is the applicant there to present tonight?
He is.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Koppelman. Thank you all. Nice to see you again. My name is Ben Zender. I'm here on behalf of Bob and Carol Forsythe and Christine Seaman, all of whom are on the computer to my left and your right to answer any questions you might have. I'm sure you've seen the application materials. I'm sure you've all been out to see the site. Interesting site. The Seaman family has owned this property since 1946-47. They built the single-family residence that you've seen there, as well as 6 cottages in 1947-1948. One of the cottages lost to erosion. And they've been operating this cottage colony ever since. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use under zoning. Kind of falls in the cracks in terms of permitted uses. The building inspector has issued his opinion that you have as part of your package that this requires commercial site plan review. It does not require zoning review. And the reason for that is because in his determination, which I asked him to make, the the removal and replacement of the single-family dwelling with the same number of bedrooms doesn't intensify the non-conforming use. The dwelling has historically been used by the family both for occupancy during the summer months when the cottage colony is open, and also it's been used as the home base, for lack of a better term, for the maintenance and operation of the cottage colony. The basement is used for both storage of materials and as a working shop for repairing screens and windows, for working on furniture, for doing all the things that need to be done. I know, I don't believe you were in the property, but there's sort of a neck breaker staircase down to the basement where everything's stored. It's very difficult to work with. Bob and Carol are planning on moving out here, retiring and moving out here. Bob's an officer with the Environmental Police Department. And to move into this house, to both live in it and also to operate the cottage colony, the house really needs to be updated. So what they've designed here is a slightly larger house that will also incorporate a garage that can be used for storage of the materials, upstairs storage of furniture, a workshop where they can work in the garage and work on it, and also can occupy the property. So the lot is upland lot area of 39,870 square feet. That's using your new bylaw definition of area above astronomical high tide, which kind of a difficult calculation, but our engineer did it. And based on that calculation, you're allowed to have site coverage of 4,784 square feet, which is 12% of that number. We're coming in at 39. I believe we're coming in at 3939, if I see the number correctly. It's 3939. Just so the board understands, that number doesn't include the cottages. This is commercial. Your definition, and I included for your review a copy of my memorandum, which I presented to you in an informal session some months ago. The bylaw defines site coverage as pertaining to the various floors of a dwelling. These particular units, because of their size, don't qualify as dwellings. You have a dwelling definition, you have a cottage definition, you have a cabin definition. These don't fall in any of it. So it was my argument to the building inspector that they're not dwellings. They're not occupied as dwellings, you know, on a seasonal year-round basis. They're operated as a seasonal cottage colony. So the building inspector agreed with my interpretation of the bylaw, which is that site coverage includes the various floor areas of the single-family dwelling plus the the attached accessory garage and the accessory buildings on the site. So we're about 800 square feet under the allowable site coverage. The house that's been designed, and you have plans for it, is fairly conventional in design. It's 3,908. It's 3939 per second floor plus the garage plus the upstairs of the garage itself. So it's fairly consistent in size with houses in the neighborhood, we believe. I think of particular concern to this board is that one of the things that the applicant is doing, if you look at the existing condition site plan and the proposed, they're relocating the entry driveway. The reason for that is because when you come in the entry, it's a very tight little turn that comes in around the building to the right. If you're coming down Shurtleff Road from the north, you almost can't make the turn. And so what they're doing is they're creating a new driveway on the north side of the property, which will allow them to give them some room to build the garage on the site, but also make an easier transition into the property. It provides a turning and parking area in front of the garage. The area on the west side of the property where the parking for the cottages is not anticipated to be changed at all. They will, as a part of the process, once they're done installing the septic system, they'll repave and remark the parking spaces as they do. Just to let you know, their habit every year is what they do is they put signs in front of each of the parking spaces, little reflective signs with the numbers of the units so people coming in know where they can park, and they dedicate the parking per unit. There's no proposed changes on the water side of the property. I'm hoping you got out there and saw the cottages. They're wonderful. They haven't changed a bit. They're still, panels inside. And then they're proposing to maintain natural vegetation on the roadside. So we're hoping with all of these presentations that you have in terms of the plans and the description that you'll find that this meets your requirements for commercial site plan approval. And I'll answer any questions I have, and Bob and Carol and Christine can answer maybe some questions that I can. And thank you.
I have one question on your site plan. Intruding onto the property of the north, to the north, there is a driveway infringement. Can you explain that? I think you're going to remove it, but is that
That's just historically where the parking area right next to the shed was, and that's where Bob historically parked his parked his truck when he pulled it in. I haven't asked him what he intends to do with that. I don't know whether that parking area has been there long enough to acquire prescriptive rights or not. So, I'm not really, I can't commit to you that they're gonna remove it, and I'm not sure they have to remove it. But they may not need it once, once this project's done, so.
Well, I guess it begs the question, if they're gonna remove it, do they have permission to remove it from the property owner?
Well, yeah, again, I haven't, they have very good relationships with the abutting property owners. It's a long-term, very long-term relationship with the abutting property owners. Dan, I don't know what the communications are. I'm assuming that if they want to remove the encroachment, I can't imagine an adjacent property would have a problem with that, if they wanted to fence that sideline or something like that, but I haven't looked at that.
Did you give consideration as to whether or not these entrance and exits should be one-way?
I'm gonna let Bob, if you don't mind, I'm gonna let Bob Forsythe answer that question. It may be easier for him, in the use of the residents to just back out of the garage and come directly out without swinging around and interfering with the traffic and the parking on the cottage colony itself.
Okay.
So I think that the way that the property is set up and the way the parking is set up, it naturally leads people in the rear to come out the south entrance. It's just the way that it's oriented. When you pull out of your parking space, you're kind of going against the grain to come around on the north. But looking at the site plan, I could completely see how Bob or Carol or Christine may want to come out the north side if they come out of the garage. So. And Shurtleff Road is it's busy in the summer, no question. But I think that it's a safe road for getting access out on either one of those driveways. Additionally, they're going to be required to go to the DPW for a road opening permit on the public road anyway. So I think, I'm not sure what the DPW's position on that's going to be.
Yeah, I didn't see it as an issue. I just was curious as to whether or not they're planning to mark it as the north in and the south out.
We hadn't made that plan.
Okay. And the owner didn't comment that you said he was going to comment, or?
Yeah, if Bob can click in and comment on that, I would ask him to.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for reviewing what we're putting forward. This is Bob Forsythe. Hopefully you can hear me. Historically, yes, it's counterclockwise entry. The angled parking allows for such, and everybody coming to the property and visiting us for their time frame parks so that when you come in from the north, you angle park and then you exit the south.
Do you have any intention of putting a sign to that effect?
We didn't sign everywhere sign, they say, but I think we notify all our tenants. Our tenants have been coming for generations, and we can certainly tell them, but I don't know if we want to add signs to, a street like what we live on with very few signs, very small signs, property numbers, etc. But that's up for review.
Okay. When I drove in there, I drove in the north and went out the south, and it made a lot of sense. So, okay. Board members, I can't see you at the moment, so we'll start with the board member closest to Paul.
Oh, okay. I really don't have any questions. I mean, the commercial element of it is really limited to having space for storage and minor repair type things, which has been going on all this time anyway. No objection, no questions.
Okay. Next.
Yeah, Brian Early.
Oh, Brian.
No questions, no objections.
Okay. Now I can see you, Dave.
I have one question, because you don't show where the parking spaces are. Are there extra parking spaces for people coming to visit these people?
I'll let Bob answer that. I don't know exactly how many spaces they've got. He knows it very, very well.
Again, the generations of people that come visit us, it's 2 parking spots per cottage, and they all know that. They're not allowed to come with additional cars. There's a 3 area space for visitors that park alongside the driveway. They're marked areas, and all the areas are marked on the pavement. And as Ben Zender said, we put reflective signs to assist, because some people can't see over the hood of the car very well, so it assists with parking where there should be, and all the visitor spots are also indicated, and all of our tenants are aware of where they're supposed to park.
Okay. Paul, does a site plan, should that show parking spaces?
It's really up to the board. If it's something that the board feels should be noted, you could request that. I think if there's no issues with the parking, you just want it noted, you could just make that a condition of approval and they could submit it after. It's not,
I'm not that concerned, to be honest. I mean, it's just, I was wondering, because most site plans do show the parking lots and things. And,
yeah, you're right.
We may have requested a waiver, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can double check. Might be an oversight on my part with the waiver request.
I know that we did submit photographs.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I found it, Ben. The applicant did request a waiver
oh, okay.
from putting that on, so, and yeah, so you could vote to grant that waiver if the board's comfortable with it.
That's my only thing. Otherwise, I thought it was a nice plan.
Next,
No questions.
okay, next.
So I'm brand new, Dave Purnell, new member of the board. This is the first property I visited. I basically drove the length of Shurtleff just to kind of check out the neighborhood, check out the density, the style of houses. Obviously, it's varied. There are some very modern houses. There are some very, unique and older Cape Cod style houses. My basic concern is just trying to keep, like the architectural components of this, the cladding of it, et cetera, kind of fitting into the cottage colony, because it is a historical, district. It almost meets the historical definition, being built in 1947. So it's more important for me to just kind of have it blend into the neighborhood. I've seen a lot of these houses, go up around that just do not fit in very well. And I like the plans. It's just kind of one of those things where I'd love to have, some kind of concession or assurance that, the cladding will be either cedar shakes or something appropriate to the neighborhood and the cottage colony.
Well, we've just done, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Purnell, because I neglected to tell the board, we're going to be in front of Historic on the 21st of January. This building just comes under the wire at 75 years old. If we'd applied 2 years ago, it wouldn't be in front of Historic. So the board may have noticed the house consists of a number of sections. The middle section really tracks that cottage style, and then there's some additions that were made actually quite a while ago. They tried to design a house that's in keeping with both the historic nature of the neighborhood. We'll have a better idea coming out of Historic, and I anticipate that there's going to be a condition on an approval if we receive one, that we have to obtain that relief from Historic. So personally, I think it's very, very, very hard to build new houses that are really true to historic structures. It just, you get one thing wrong on pitch or something, you ruin it. But I think they've done a good job trying here.
No, I agree. I like the elevations are great. The structure looks really nice. It's just, trying to preserve that look. I have no objections over this, barring any objection from the historical commission.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody on Zoom? First of all,
Dan, I'm here. It's
Oh,
Michelle.
go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, I don't have any questions, but I think, Ben, you said something about sightlines. I just was wondering about, I know that area really, really well. And actually, I know some of the families that have been renting there since the 60s. So love that whole section. And I just couldn't visualize, kind of the sightline piece. And you said you don't anticipate any issues there on Shurtleff.
If I may, through the chair, Dan.
Yes.
Well, if we're talking about sightlines in terms of traffic sightlines, I think that the new proposal is a better orientation of the driveway for sightline purposes. It's just because coming in is very tight, and if you do go past it, which people do, people drive past properties looking for them to turn around. If you do drive past and turn on and come down from the north, it's very difficult to get into this property the way it's oriented now. And I tried to do it the other week for Historic. So I think that I think the traffic along Shurtleff is pretty slow, hopefully. I mean, it seems like it's set up to have people drive slowly. So I think the new driveway is better from a sightline standpoint. If the member is talking about, you know, views and vista impacts in terms of sightlines, there really isn't a clear view of the water over through this property. It's just the way that it's set up right now. So
I know I'm talking about safety.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Michelle. So, yeah, so I think this new orientation is a little bit better. The other thing that the members may have noticed with, you know, there really isn't a sign out there right now that identifies the property. That's really just because they take it down in the winter to repaint and then put it back up in the spring when the property's open. So there is a better sign out there.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on Zoom? Anybody in the audience want to speak on this application? Okay. We're going to try a little something here tonight. Because of the way Paul has presented the proposed findings of fact, I think it's actually a better system. So I'm going to read the following proposed findings of fact for case number PB 2024-14. Number 1 through number 10 are the standard findings of facts, and I'm going to suggest we adopt them as written with the introduction of the fact that we did receive one letter indicating support of the application. Paul, do we have any other letters?
No, and if I could.
Yep.
Don't
Go
mean to
ahead.
disrupt your flow here, but the board should pause to take a vote on the granting of the waivers.
yes,
And I can read that off if you want.
Yes, please do. I forgot
So,
we didn't do that.
The motion would be to grant waivers for the following items: plans for location of existing proposed parking spaces, building floor plans for existing dwelling, which is to be demolished, location of existing and proposed signs, location description of proposed open space recreation areas, and erosion control plan. Those were requested by the applicant.
I will make a motion that we grant those waivers as requested.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just in terms of the erosion control plan, just drawing blanks here, but normally in this type of thing, how would that fit in? I mean, basically, if there's any to the construction that's going on, it would be how that's going to be handled in terms of contamination or that sort of thing. Or?
Yeah, so like standard building practices, when they're doing the site work, they would set up erosion control anyways, and that's overseen
So it's
by the
being
building.
covered by other.
Yeah, they do it in practice. It's just, this would be a waiver from having they didn't depict a plan
Okay.
showing
But
where they would set it up.
But the actions will still be taken on that. So yeah, okay, I'm good.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Dave Hobbs,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Rob's not here, Brian,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. And Patricia, you're an alternate, so you wouldn't be voting on that. Okay.
Yep.
All right, now I'm gonna go to the findings of facts. I have the following.
Hold on, Mr.
Yep.
Hold on. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Just want to make sure we got how many people voted? 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5. Okay.
And Michelle,
Sorry.
yeah.
And me.
Michelle. All right. Sorry. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, we had it. Okay, great. Okay, for case number PB 2024-14, we have the following proposed findings of facts, standard conditions number 1 through 10, with the addition on number 9 that we did receive one letter in support of the application. Then the following, let's see, the way you wrote it though, Paul, that's it, right? There's no more conditions, findings of fact. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the findings of facts as noted?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Dave Hobbs,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Brian, Brian?
Aye.
Okay, Kevin,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Okay. Now, moving on for case number PB 2024-14, we have the following proposed standard conditions. And Paul, as I can see, these are all standard, correct? I don't see any reason to note any one particular.
No, so, number 1 through 10 are the standard conditions. We had proposed additional conditions, which were,
Okay, so why don't I do that? Let's say, is there a motion to approve for case number PB 2024, site plan approval subject to the proposed standard conditions of 1 through 10, plus the additional conditions that the applicant, will call this number 11. The applicant shall provide, that's a standard condition, all right, whatever. The applicant shall provide the building department landscape plan or narrative description with a list of plantings, of which at least 50% of the must be native species prior to the issuance of a building permit for the proposed dwelling. Staff note, we don't say that, but okay. The applicant states that they will replace the grass with the grass. I don't know why this isn't reading. With grass, the existing driveway portion to be removed. During a site plan visit, staff noted that the existing screening buffer along the roadway is deteriorating. If the applicant does predict the need or desire to replace the natural screening, a simple narrative plan description with a list of replacement plantings or other screenings would be appropriate. Number 12. Pursuant to the Historic District hearing scheduled for January 21st, 2025, the applicant shall prepare, prior to issuance of a demolition permit for the existing dwelling, provide a building commissioner with a letter of approval by its historic commission authorizing a demolition of the existing dwelling. Number 13, upon completion of a new septic system installation and subsequent repaving of the driveway area shown on the approved plan, the applicant shall install new pavement markings delineating parking spaces for the cottage colony units that maintain the current parking number of spaces and layout, providing a minimum of 1 marked parking space per rental unit. Paul, he did indicate that he has 2 per rental unit. Is that an issue?
no, that's fine. We just, at least one.
At least one, okay.
We've got it covered.
And number 14, prior to the start of the work, the applicant shall obtain from the Eastham DPW a road opening permit for the proposed new driveway. A copy of the permit shall be provided to the building department. Is there a motion to approve commercial? Okay, you read it. Okay, fine. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Do you get that, Paul, who did second?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor, Dave Hobbs,
Aye.
Michelle Vaughn,
Aye.
Brian Early,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
and chair votes aye. Okay, you're done. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Moving right along. We're going to call case number PB 2024-13 for 46 Bow Road Rear, as shown on map 07, parcel 482. Brian and Brianna Sapala own the site plan approval, residential pursuant to Eastham zoning bylaw, section 7.4, residential lot intensity, and section 10.3, site plan approval residential, to construct a new single-family dwelling with a proposed site coverage of 5,179 square feet on a lot containing 87,045 square feet, where the site coverage ratio exceeds 3,000 square feet. Good evening. I assume Mr. Zunder is taking this?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Kaufman. Nice to see you again. It's nice to see you all again. So I'm Ben Zender. I'm here on behalf of Brian and Brianna Sapala, who are sitting right to my left and to your right. And you all may recall, or most of you may recall, that we were before you on November 20th for a review of the project. And before we get too far into it, I would like, Mr. Kaufman, if we could, just to go over who the members are that are sitting on this and who is available to hear this matter.
As I recall, you withdrew the previous application. Is that correct?
No, I believe we just continued the application from the meeting on November 20th. And I was conferring with Mr. Lag earlier to try to get an understanding of who actually was hearing this matter before and who's available to hear this now. And I'm still a little confused.
All right, Paul, I'm gonna leave that to you.
So, just looking at the meeting minutes from the November meeting, Dan Koppelman, Dave Hobbs, Brian Early, Kevin Gatlin, Pat Canavan were all present,
And I was too.
and Michelle Vion was present. So, everybody here now is eligible to vote if we get to the voting, with the exception, Mr. Purnell, you are free to participate, ask questions, but you just can't technically vote. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
We can't have 7,
6. Rob Young is not here, right?
right?
So with your
Oh,
permission, Mr. Chairman.
Rob, are you here? I'm sorry.
No, he wasn't.
I'm just looking
Rob
on.
is joined via Zoom. Rob has joined us via Zoom.
Oh, yeah? Okay. So we have Rob?
If he's able to
Yeah,
hear us and log in, okay.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We see you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Mr. Kaufman. Thank you, Mr. Lag. So when we were at the meeting last time, there were a number of issues that were raised by the board. I think most importantly, I think the project as presented before was exceeding the maximum site coverage that was available for this particular lot. Also, there were concerns that were raised by both various members and also people who live in the neighborhood about the size of the project, the number of bedrooms, the intensity of proposed use of the project. We also had some issues with regard to how do we classify the front building, whether it's an ADU, whether it's part of the project, what is it? So what Brian and Brianna did was they really went back to the drawing board and started from scratch. And they've presented to you a new project that does a number of things differently. First and foremost, it involves the removal of the existing old structure on the property, and we're going to be in front of the Historic Commission on January 21st. They've done their walkthrough. They've looked at the property. I don't know what their response is going to be, but we're going to have to go through the demolition delay process with this on that. They've designed a new structure that we presented you both site plans and elevations for, as well as, if I have permission to approach the board. I don't know if you grant that permission, Mr. Kaufman.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a handout. And the reason that this is being presented now is just because there were some comments in the staff report that I really wanted to be able to address. Regarding light fixtures, there's a photograph of the house that is being built that is actually also was built at 46 Concert Road, and in order, I'm going to put a stack of these up in front of you. So, and also there's in that package there's a spreadsheet with site coverages of other dwellings in the neighborhood just for comparative purposes. And Mr. Kaufman, I'll read those when we get to the appropriate time. The house that's being proposed is bear with me 1 second. The house that's being proposed is significantly reduced in size. It has a total site coverage of 5,179 square feet. The allowable site coverage in this area on this lot based on lot size is 6,000 square feet. So we've brought it down. We reduced the number of bedrooms from 8 bedrooms down to 5 bedrooms. We've moved the house further back on the lot, which creates some fairly significant setbacks in the area. From the front, where the driveway comes in, is 241 feet. In the rear, it's 133 feet. And the side setbacks are 62 feet, 56 feet, which provides some fairly significant setback in the area. There's a pool area that's in there. The design of the house is what I would call a fairly conventional design. They used a design that is really designed to use both gables, dormers, front porches to minimize or to address the scale and the massing of the property. And then they've also identified a landscape plan which provides for screening around the edge of the property. So we're really hopeful that this is more in line with what the board was looking for in terms of the type of structure that you're looking for in the neighborhood. I'd like to address just briefly, before we get into questions, the bylaw, because, you know, as I sit in front of this board, feels to me, and this is just, and I always get a little retrospective when I get in front of this board, but exercise that the board always engages in, and it's an unusual exercise. It's like, how big is the house relative to it? And so what happens is we get into neighborhoods, and there's some streets that this board's worked in a lot, where the houses have been, most of them have been upgraded. And so we're coming in with the last house in the neighborhood, we're bringing it up to size. That's a pretty straightforward exercise. All the houses are 3,000 square feet. We're coming up to that. We have other neighborhoods where you're the first house to upgrade in a neighborhood, and then you face this sort of uphill battle psychologically in allowing a board to look at a house to see whether it's appropriate in the neighborhood in terms of what we're looking at. But I went back and took a closer look at the bylaw today because I really was interested. We've got a situation where we have a lot of 87,000 square feet. And when we look at the other lots in the immediate neighborhood, and this handout has a little spreadsheet, which if you look at it, it's listing, and this was put together by Brianna and Brian. The lots in this neighborhood primarily are in the 20,000 square foot range. They're, you know, and you can go right down the list and look 23,000, 21,000, 24, 22, 24. They're roughly a quarter of the size of this lot. Your voters went to town meeting 2 years ago and voted a new residential site coverage maximum. It's a scaled number. And it says, look, based on lot size, you're allowed to have a certain percentage of your lot, And on this lot, that allowable site coverage is 6,000 square feet. So we have this inherent tension between when the bylaw says that this is an appropriate size for your house, but the house is bigger than the other houses in the neighborhood, and the lot's bigger than the other houses in the neighborhood. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that tension? So when you read the bylaw at section 10.3.2, standards and criteria, it gives you the language that you as a board are supposed to look at and understand how to handle these applications. And one of the things, when I looked at this, there's a word that I just couldn't find in, which was size. It's just not in there. So when you look at how to handle, for example, scaling, it says proposed development shall be compatible with a prevailing character of other buildings and uses on the site and in the neighborhood through the use of appropriate height, scale, massing, setback, building materials, screening, lighting, and other architectural techniques. So what it says that when you design for a neighborhood, it doesn't say the house can't be bigger. It says that you have to design for the neighborhood using techniques and materials and devices that render the building or make it appropriate to the neighborhood in terms of its scale, its massing, its lighting and things. And then when you get to height and scale, it says the proposed project shall be compatible with other structures on the lot and in the neighborhood and shall maintain balanced proportions in relation to building scale, height, width, roof shape, and roof pitch. It doesn't say that the house shouldn't be bigger. It just says that you have to make sure that when you build a house in the neighborhood, it's compatible with the neighborhood in terms of, again, the way that you design and use this house. And the same thing with massing. The project shall maintain balanced proportions in relation to the lot area and other structures in the neighborhood. The proposed project shall utilize architectural techniques to help reduce the building mass, including, and then they list the devices. So what I would argue is that the town has gone to town meeting and said, look, this is the size of a house that we think is appropriate for a lot. And it's scaled, it's based on the lot size. And then the planning board requirements here under residential site review say, look, when we design these houses and bring them in for review, we have to make sure they're compatible in terms of the way that we site this house, the way we screen this house, the way we light this house, the way we design this house. And that's, again, that's a fairly subjective determination on your part, but I think your town planner has done a really good job of outlining for you the mechanisms that the applicants have used in the applications, has talked about dormer use, you know, recessed areas on the property and things like that. So with that note on size and how you deal with it, I would submit to you that I think that Brian and Brianna have done a really good job of designing a house that takes into account the large size of this lot, the value of this lot, and the use of, and the way that this house is sited in the lot, and the way that the design that you can see here. And we're fortunate enough to have a picture, you know, of a house that just got built in Orleans at the same design, you know, and the same size. You're able to see exactly what this looks like and visualize what that will look like on a lot. So with those comments, I'm sure I'll be addressing a lot of questions as they come up on the board, and I'll be ready to take notes and hear what you and everybody else has to say. Thank you.
Okay. You're right. This is the major issue. But I am going to suggest that if this lot were to be divided into 2 lots, each lot, as you point out in your calculations, could be a 3,000 square foot house. And the impact of 2 3,000 square foot houses, in my opinion, is less than 1 6,000 square foot house. So when we look at the characteristic of the neighborhood, while you're right, this is 80,000 square feet, it could be 2 lots at 40,000 square feet, and it could be 2 houses at 3,000 square feet. This is probably, in my opinion, the most important aspect of this entire application, because this board is charged with determining whether or not the application conforms to the characteristics of the neighborhood. And to that extent, Paul has prepared a chart at my request to show what the sizes are of the houses in the neighborhood. And I am going to ask at this point that Paul present that. I believe it's possible to present it on the screen in the hearing room. Is that correct, Paul?
Yeah, we just need to share the screen and we can bring it up.
Why don't we do that?
Better put your glasses on, Ben.
I'm sorry.
You can zoom in.
Still can't read it, but at least it looks good.
Grow it for you a little bit.
Yeah,
We're getting there. And that.
thank you.
Okay, I looked at this and studied it. The square footage of the houses in the neighborhood run from 768 square feet to 2,560 square feet. The width of the houses run from 32 feet to 81 feet. The depth of the houses run from 34 feet to 39 feet. And there are 1- and 2-story houses in the neighborhood. This application has 5,179 square feet. The width is 80 feet. The depth is 51 feet, and it's 2 stories. So when we try to talk about conformity to the characteristics of the neighborhood, you're right, it's off the chart. And your argument is it's off the chart because the lot is twice the size. My concern is the lot doesn't have to be twice the size. We don't have to accept the fact that the lot could not be subdivided into 2 1-acre lots and create 2 3,000 square feet houses. And with that impact of 2 3,000 square foot houses, be more conforming to the characteristics of the neighborhood than 1 house at 5,179 square feet. And I need to open this up to the board members to find out how they feel about the size of this house and conformity to the characteristics of the neighborhood. And the reason I think we need to do that is that all the other aspects of site plan approval become secondary to this issue as to whether or not the house is appropriate for the neighborhood. And I don't think it's fair to the applicant to string them along and go down the road and pretend like, well, it's okay, you know, maybe we could take it, and then slam it at the end and say it's not acceptable. Nor is it perhaps fair to the neighbors to perhaps not even consider the size of the houses. So board members, we have to make this decision. And it's not an easy one. We are constantly weighing the rights of the applicant, the rights of the property owner versus the rights of the neighbors. And perhaps that's why this bylaw change was written. So I am going to go down the board, starting with the member closest to Paul, and ask where you are with this particular issue of characteristic of the neighborhood.
I have grave concerns over the size of the house. And you do correctly point out that the reason for this bylaw was I serve on the task force and have for a few years now that was formed to take a look at various issues in residential property. Now we've taken on some commercial questions. And one of the most concerning issue that the task force was even formed around was the idea that large structures come into a neighborhood and over a period of time become the norm. And the neighborhood changes considerably over a period of time. And the reason for the scaling, as you point out, if you compare that to the sizes that were in vogue prior to the town meeting of a couple of years ago, the scaling went in a downward direction, particularly as the lots got larger. The concern simply was that you have some large lots in a neighborhood where the rest of the neighborhood are smaller lots and smaller houses. Suddenly, someone builds a big house on a big lot, and then you get another big house, another big lot, another big house, big lot, and so on. And that becomes the norm, and the neighborhood is not the same neighborhood any longer. And in deference to the folks who've been living in that neighborhood for many years and have their properties and their money invested, it's quite a shock. And so the task force was charged with taking a look at that issue to see what exactly could be done about it, if anything. And the result was the scaling, as you see. And again, for a lot of that size, it's a lot smaller now than it was prior to the town meeting. And there's still issues that come up with this. There may be some tweaking going forward on it. So whenever I see a large house going in, yes, maybe it meets the standard in the sense that a large lot can take a large house. That's not the only question there. There is still a question of scale and other things we have to take a look at. That said, I will admit that since the plan that we saw back in November, the plan that you see here is certainly an improvement in the sense that there was close to 6,000 square feet of total lot coverage on that plan with the two buildings that were there before. Where now it's the one building down to a little under 5,200 square feet. That's an improvement. To go from 8 bedrooms down to the 5, that's an improvement. If I was to quote myself from November, it seemed to me that the two houses with all the bedrooms and bathrooms and game room and everything else just struck me as a resort. This has a little less of that feel, but nevertheless, it is still outsized for a neighborhood of everything else. And not that I've been on this board for all that long, about a year and a half, give or take. We've had large houses before come in front of us, and you might have one or two neighbors that have come upon to make some requests or whatever. If you look behind you, there's a whole group of people that have a lot of grave concerns about what's going on in this neighborhood. And to me, that kind of outpouring says something, that it really is hit home with these folks. And again, we have to take a look at everyone that's involved with this, not just the property owner. I have other concerns just that were raised previously that I think still have yet to be addressed in terms of this very narrow lane. Basically, it's a single lane to access the property. There's safety concerns with that. Certainly, I don't know what the fire department's opinion would be on that, but that's something that needs to be checked out. There's been concern expressed by the neighbors that anyone who uses this property, it does not have direct beach access, and what's to stop the people there from trespassing over other people's property that perhaps are sitting behind you to get access to the beaches on the bay. Certainly with that many, even with 5 bedrooms, that's still a fair number of people. You've got 5 parking spaces plus the 2 that are inside the garage for a total of 7. In the proposed turn area, I never thought twice about it until you take a look at the site plan. And it's noted that there are trees that are proposed to sort of block the view of the proposed turn area, which I thought was a bit odd because no one's ever objected to turn areas. So why would we be landscaping that to sort of hide it away? In theory, on a lot that size, who knows how many parking spaces you could squeeze in there. And it just implies, maybe not states, but implies there could be an awful lot of traffic coming and going into that property. And I'm not completely removed from my thoughts of it being a resort type of use. And I think the traffic, potential noise and everything else that has been cited previously, those issues have not been addressed to my satisfaction. And I'll be curious to hear how the neighbors feel about that. But I still have a lot of concerns over this project. And right now I'm not inclined to favor it.
Hey, Brian.
So I hear my colleague, his articulations are well put. My concern, and I hadn't considered what the Chairman Koppelman said about dividing the lot into two and 3,000 square foot houses. My concern is for how much trafficability and automobiles are going to be using, because it is kind of restrictive going in and coming out. But I think that's the approach that I'm taking. You know, may not be unique, but and hearing what my the chairman and my colleague Kevin Gatlin has said.
Okay, next.
I understand that the number of bedrooms has been reduced and the square footage has been somewhat reduced. However, it's extremely too large for this kind of a cottage, well, maybe not cottage area, but in this community of small places. I mean, even if you had a 3,000 square foot house, that would be big for that neighborhood. Not a 5,000 square foot house. And you have 5 bedrooms and each one of them has their own private bathroom. I have to agree with Kevin. It looks like, you know, a tourist place. I mean, you know, a resort. Doesn't look like a home. Not whatsoever. And the idea of that Brian put forward about the single road coming in and out, and I'm absolutely sure that some of these people walk their dogs and have their grandchildren with them walking down, and you know, and you're going to put 5 to 10 extra cars going and coming, because this is a party house. They're not coming in there and staying for 2 weeks and then leaving. They're going in and out. They're going to make beer runs. They got to go to the beach. They got to get food. They're going out to restaurants. They're not coming in and out one time a day. And you have a very, very narrow little lane that a lot of people use. So I'm sorry. I said this the last time, that it's far too large for this area. That's my final word.
Okay, next.
So the last time I looked at this and thought, whoa, this does look like something that doesn't belong in this small neighborhood. And I appreciate the work that's been done to change, but it still has these elements in it that don't seem to fit in with the character of the neighborhood.
Okay. Yes. All right. Now let's, Paul, what's the status of?
Does Michelle
want
want
to-
We still have David and Michelle.
Rob and I are on as well.
And Rob.
And
All
Rob?
right.
Sorry, Rob.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and Rob too.
Right. So my question to Paul is, Dave is not going to vote. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't have the ability to vote, but I do have the ability to comment.
All right, so can we put the other two voting members first and then put you on? Is that possible?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Michelle,
Sure. So, I mean, we can focus on the size of the lot and the size of the house, and I think that I'm so impacted by the involvement and commitment of the group of people that are your neighbors that have spoken out with a single opinion. You know, it's not even often we do have abutters come, and there are often differing views and differing viewpoints. And it has really impacted me as a board member to hear a consistent, all the documents have been reviewed, all of the question about the historic commission meeting and that this meeting is happening prior to that one. I mean, these are thoughtful comments from all of the people. I mean, I live in a neighborhood in Eastham, and I think if all of my neighbors came out month after month and at great distance and was on Zoom and all that against a project, I would really, think twice about it. So, yeah, some adjustments have been made. And I completely agree with Dave and Brian's comments and Kevin's comments about the traffic, because a size of a property carries with it a volume of activity. And that's lighting, it's people coming in and out, it's noise, it's cars, it's traffic, it's, it brings commercial value into the town, but it also impacts neighborhoods. So I stand with my colleagues around that it's not something that I can approve as it stands today.
thank you. Rob?
Yeah, I do appreciate the fact that you did downsize the project. And a comment was brought up that, certain neighborhoods have had a big house come in and then a few more bigger houses and stuff. In this particular neighborhood, that can't happen. This is the biggest lot. The neighbors can't go even come close to making half the size of what is proposed to be built. The other thing is I have had the ability where I've had friends rent in that neighborhood and gone to visit them, and I know what it's like to go on that circular bow road, and it is extremely narrow. If you have a truck and a car, the truck has to drive up into that center area for the car to get by. To be bringing in a minimum of 5 vehicles, 2 more in that turnaround, because technically it's 2 more parking spaces, and then you got a long driveway there. That's more traffic than that property sees in a week. Even just the first day that everyone comes and they don't go anyplace. That would be a parade coming in there. The other thing is I did go look at the property on Tonsit, because I wanted to see what had been built by the same people. It's beautiful, but it's on Tonsit Road in Orleans. That's a wide town street with a double yellow line going down the center of it. This is a dirt road, that the neighbors fill in the potholes every winter season. It doesn't set well with me, and again, I would have to side with the neighbors that this is just something that just doesn't fit in there.
Okay, now we're going to go back to David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I did have the opportunity to walk the lot today. I received the plans and everything this week. As a new member, I'm not allowed to vote on this because, I was not here for the initial proposal. But my agreement with my colleagues is strong, and I say this to the petitioners. Just because you have the lot size doesn't mean you have to build to the maximum. I mean, we are a small rural community on a sandbar out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That entire neighborhood, most of that Bayside area, and probably within about a half a mile to 3/4 of a mile radius, is all small houses. I think the biggest one I saw was maybe 2,500 square feet. There was an 18-acre lot that Paul put up on the screen that had a 906 square foot house on it. 18 acres, they could do 6,000. No one would ever notice that house even existed. This particular house, I walked to the back, I walked the staked out area, saw where the pool was going to go. The pool tells to me this is going to be a rental, most likely. I do not really see this as being a single family home. The only family that could possibly use this as a single family is my sister. She has 4 kids. And most of them are grown now, but this would have been a great house for them. But she also lives in another state on a main road, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of concern about safety. I completely agree with that. In my about 25 minutes of walking the lot, driving in, driving out of the neighborhood, I passed at least 4 pedestrians, 2 walking dogs. You know, that road is potholy. My 4-wheel drive came in handy. You know, it's definitely, as you set up in size, you set up in occupation, you set up in traffic, you set up in noise, you set up in, you know, nuisance to the neighborhood. I'm assuming most of the abutters here in the room tonight, they have come with a unified message, and had I the ability to vote on this, this would definitely be a hard no for me. And as I said at the top, just because you have the land doesn't mean you have to use your entire square footage, which you're pretty much up at the limit at probably 94, 95%. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Zender.
Well, do you
As
want me to-
well, no, let's sort of recap if we can. As I see it, this is the stumbling block. I can open it up to the public and I can let them all express their concerns. My suspicion is there probably are 99% or more that don't want this project. You've heard that the board members aren't particularly interested in making the determination it conforms to the neighborhood. What do you want to do?
Well, first of all, Mr. Chairman, I haven't heard what the neighbors have had to say, so I haven't put out on the table all the things that I would like to advise my clients on. So I would ask the chair to entertain public comment and then allow me to respond and make that decision when the public, you know, portion of the meeting has been at least fleshed out in some way.
I thought you were given that opportunity at the last hearing, but if you wish to have all the public come up now and speak, we can do that.
I
Paul?
would, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
what do you think in terms of, I'm not trying to curtail anybody's comments. My only concern is the fact that we have a unanimous board that is not in favor of determining this conforms to the characteristics of the neighborhood. Given that, we know we could hear testimony from the neighbors. Where do you stand on this? Do you feel that it's appropriate we determine now that where we feel in terms of characteristics of the neighborhood, or that we open it up and let everybody speak again on this? Where are you at?
Well, it's not my determination to make. And this is a public hearing. So the public hearing is still open, continued from last meeting.
Right.
So, you know, we will need to provide the opportunity for those who want to speak to do that. So whether it's now or at a future meeting, we have to allow that to happen. So I guess I would just say, the folks in the audience are here. They have heard the comments from the board. So if that means anything to the comments you want to make, you can take that into account. But I think you have to let the folks speak who want to speak.
Oh, I totally agree that everybody should speak who wants to speak. The question is the timing of that action. And so I will, obviously, we're not closing the hearing tonight. So
You might be, Mr. Chairman.
So with that being said,
Sorry,
so,
I can interrupt.
yeah,
Just so everyone understands kind of procedurally. there's kind of two phases. Usually our meetings most of them are one and done, so it all gets coalesced, but technically we've opened the public hearing and this is the portion of the case that we have the discussion and it's open to public comment from the abutters and so forth. At some point, the board can close the public hearing portion. It doesn't mean everything's resolved, but you close the public hearing, meaning you're not taking any more testimony or information from the public and so forth. And then it's really just between the board's deliberation. So
Okay,
you can keep the public hearing going through tonight, and if it gets continued and so on, or, which is what I guess that was my point, is at some point, the neighbors will have their opportunity, but then the board can decide whether, if you've, in other words, heard enough and you understand the sentiment, and you can close that, and then it just is a closed conversation, still open to the public to attend, but it's just a discussion between the board and the applicant. So that's procedurally, that's how it
Right.
works.
well, I am not prepared to close testimony at all tonight. I want it left open and I want everybody to be able to speak. So that being said, let's open it up. First neighbor in the audience, please come up to the podium and speak. Give your name and address and tell us what you think.
Yeah, hi, this is John Heron. I'm at 30 Bow Road, and the butter to the property, 46 Bow Road rear. And so let me start these comments by thanking Brianna and Brian and Ben Zender for their communication. It's been great, right? They've been sending us the information. It's been timely. We've been on a short porch here because it's been compressed with the holidays. And so we just now are getting some of the documents. So we do, I'm sorry. We do have some, it's not fully baked out. Some of the things we still have open questions on the size and that kind of thing. But some of the comments that you've made, we'll just reiterate, right? Because we're of the same mind. And that is that the project is too big, right? It's 3 times the size of the average home in the neighborhood. As my neighbor says, Wayne, the first floor is bigger than his entire house, and he has a pretty good sized house. So it's just out of scope, out of character for our neighborhood. The other thing is that they've made great changes to what they proposed. However, we didn't think that they actually responded to you the way that you instructed them. And so, you asked them to come back with something which was materially different than the size that they proposed. There are some of us here who may get up and speak who thinks that this is bigger than what was proposed before. And so we have a difference of opinion on that, but some people think that it actually did go down in size. We appreciate the transparency. They did call out that the room above the garage is going to be a 5th bedroom. And so we really do appreciate them, calling that out so that, it was clear to us, what was going on. But it's still 5 bedrooms. It's still 5 bedrooms and 5 baths. It's, much bigger than anything that we have. And then we still have some concerns about, the other work that, the other property that Brian and Brianna have, they, use as we sent that to you the last time we made a presentation with the photos and, the description that they post online with what they're doing. And so, so predominantly, my position is that it's still way too big. It's out of character with the neighborhood. And so one of the points I want to make too is that if you agree, if you pass something like this, then the problem is going to be without some kind of parameters, what could happen next? And so if you allow something this big in our neighborhood, then what's to stop the next person from going even bigger? So 3 times is, significant relative to everything else. And so if that is then the new norm, then what goes up from there. And I think you brought that up, Kevin, talking about it's a slippery slope that this would be, going down. So we don't want that to happen in our neighborhood either. So, I'll stop there and then other people would like to speak. Thanks.
Evening. Arthur Richmond, 30 Emily's Way, and I'm in a butter on the backside. And I just have two questions. The first one, the discussion by the applicant's person here. Is it Paul? Yeah, Ben, okay, Ben. He's talking about a residential area, and this is a commercial operation. Is that area zoned commercial? Can you put a commercial operation in there? He's talking about bylaws with looking at the size of the land, but it's a commercial operation. It doesn't apply to a regular house. Okay, if that's what he has. The second thing is, I guess, I don't know, I just read it on a letter that we have, that they already have 2 properties in Eastham. Are they allowed to have a third commercial property in the town? And I appreciate all the comments you've made, but I don't know if we can get an answer to those questions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm struggling to recall when I stated this was a commercial operation. So, I don't think I ever said that.
But it's got to be a commercial operation. You got 5 bedrooms and you're renting.
So you're saying that every 5-bedroom house is a commercial operation?
Not if it's a family home. I mean, how many houses in town have got 5 bedrooms that rent?
I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing it's more than the number of people in this room, so.
No, maybe, maybe not. I don't know what the board thinks about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
you don't mind if I just want to address something?
No, please do.
Oh, sorry, I was talking to my friend, Mr. Burns. Just this issue was raised and the board has to look at this under residential site plan review, and it is presented as a single family dwelling. And I know this is difficult, but rental isn't allowed use as of now in the town. So I guess you just got to kind of keep that in your minds that the owner is, permitted to rent the house. At what point it becomes a different kind of operation, a commercial operation? I would say the standard practice, which is common and has happened for decades here in Eastham, yes, a lot of people rent their house seasonally. We've had other areas in town where it starts to cross a line where, a site becomes advertised as a venue to host events and weddings and things like that, and it's marketed that way. That is something that the town monitors, the health department monitors that, and we've had that come up in other areas in town over the years where we have to do zoning enforcement to make it known that if you're renting it for your standard residential uses, vacation uses, that's allowed, but when it becomes another type of operation that is clearly a commercial venue hosting events, that's not allowed in the residential district. So these things are monitored and enforced when we become aware of them, but I guess I just want to try to set the board for the board to be able to analyze this in the right format. And even though, and I understand you kind of intuit what you think is going to happen, but you kind of have to keep that separate. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but it's just my guidance on that point.
I appreciate and I agree with your assessment. Okay, next.
I'm Paul Burns. My home is on 70 Bow Road. I have a vacant lot on 45 Bow Road. I also have a vacant lot on 120 Turnip Field Road. That is all in the perimeter of this piece of property. The property of the subdivision on Bull Road was my father. We had 7.5 acres. So the majority of these lots fall into my father's subdivision. And that's why you see part of the road was tarred. I mean, not tarred, and we're on the section where it's not tarred. I drove the bulldozer that pushed that road in back in 1970. So I've been there for quite a while. So I want to first talk to you, one, we're talking about how he has downsized. In the application, he has downsized. But if you take the first proposal that he put in 60 days ago, these are his numbers. The first floor was 1,658 feet. In this proposal, the first floor is 2,995 square feet. The second floor in his first proposal was 2,121. The second floor on this proposal is 2,185. So actually the main building, the biggest building that houses the swimming pool and everything, is actually bigger than what he brought to you at the first hearing. All right? This neighborhood, there are no swimming pools. His plan for lighting is probably, because we haven't had enough time. Me and Ben shared office space in Orleans almost 20 years ago. Ben knows who I am. All right. He is an excellent attorney, and he will fight tooth and nail for the people that he's representing.
Thank you.
All right. But are there loopholes? What I would like the board to review, and we haven't had a chance as a meeting to review, because Ben put the plans in on the 8th, which was the last day you could put the plans in. At 11 o'clock that day, I went for a copy of the plans. They hadn't been stamped. They weren't available till later on. I applaud Ben. Very smart move on his part.
Mr. Chairman.
This is getting beyond what we should be hearing.
Again, I emailed the abutters representative the minute I sent before I filed with the town.
Well, let's not get this as a personal situation. We have a application from an applicant who is actually not Ben Zender. He's representing the applicant. We should be talking about the applicant's rights, the neighbor's rights, and the review of this planning board on this application and nothing else.
Thank you.
Well, if you look at the site plan, which I would like to refer to, is the location of where the septic system is. It is at the lowest, farthest point away to the north and along the property line, which leaves a lot of open space. What I'm trying to say, this is phase 1 of the development. What else is going to go in through all this other open land? This is a concern of the neighborhood. What else can go in there? What else is going to be developed 2 years from now in another meeting? Like I said before, nobody else has a swimming pool this side. Nobody has a swimming pool. It doesn't fit into the character of the neighborhood. If you want to get into discussions about the roads, I'm a retired state engineer. I was hired by the town of Eastham to come in on phase 2 of the waterwork paving. And now you see how the roads are paved curb to curb, where if you're in phase 1, you still have trenches that weren't paved and the road paved to width. So if you want me to discuss what the road is, I can get into great depth of the condition of it and what's going to happen to the road with the type of building that's going to go in here with the traffic. Because the tide port coming in from Higgins Road is no more than a driveway. There is no subbase. All it is 2.5 inches of binder with 1.25 inches of top with a sand base. So I can talk to you about the weight of trucks and so on and so forth. That will destroy that road. That's why I've said before at one of the other meetings, I would like them to post a bond so that road can get put back into the same condition, the tar section. Because the volume of traffic and the equipment that's going to come in is going to tear it apart. And it's going to destroy the neighborhood. So my thing is, what I would like the board to review, and we haven't had a chance to maybe find it and review it. I think Paul Lag was the one at town meeting that brought up the article that was brought up, and the town administrator spoke about it and all the selectmen were in favor. And I think it mentioned that the board, your board, was in favor 100% of this new article. So I'm not an attorney, but the way that I read the law and what we were told at town meeting, and we voted strongly for it, there were no houses in the town of Eastham to be built over 3,000 square feet. And the reason the site coverage was in there was for smaller lots to decrease the size of the buildings they could put on the lot. So the building inspector on his application, I say he interpreted the law right. He rejected this proposal based on it was over a 3,000 square foot house. So no matter if it's one lot or it's two lots, I feel strongly he can only build a 3,000 square foot house on it. Now, if Attorney Zenda is right in what he's saying on the site coverage, then maybe the town should review this and should it go to land court? Because I think the only one that can make this ruling is a judge. Did the town not draw up this bylaw properly? And it is the site coverage still falls in, because 3,000 square foot houses just goes out the window. But that's what we were told at town meeting, and that's what I voted at town meeting. And I think the rest of the people in town, we had no problem getting people sign up in protest of it being so big. I think I could have gone to any road in town and shown the plans. Would you want this house beside you? And I think it would be 100% no. So let's review what the town had to say, and let's have a town attorney or a land court decide, can he build anything over 3,000 square feet, no matter what the size of the lot is?
Just as a point of clarification, there is no rule that says you cannot build a house greater than 3,000 square feet. You're misinterpreting the codes.
Then what I would say, I really want to see what was presented at the town meeting, what we voted on.
You can do that.
Yeah. I thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Wayne Hastings, 20 Bow Road. I'm just gonna probably reiterate everything that has been said, just to reinforce our opposition. The proposed house is grossly out of character to our neighborhood. Something like that would destroy the charm, the quality. I just don't see something like that fitting in our neighborhood at all. I'm not even sure how many 5,000 square foot houses we have in Eastham. I took a ride around looking for some big houses, and I found one 6,000 square foot house. It was off of Sparrow Road, right by the beach. It's huge. It's just like a hotel, basically. I went over to Shurtleff. I thought I'd find a 5,000 square foot house there. I didn't, from what I saw. I looked on the assessor's ticket, the site, and most of those houses were 3,000 square feet or less. I was surprised. I thought I'd find something bigger. So the question I have is, how many 5,000 square foot houses do we have in this town? Maybe 5. I don't know. I went and looked to see where I could find those type. And thinking that something like that would go on our neighborhood is just crazy. I went and visited 46 Tonsett Road to see what the house actually looked like. I took a picture of it. I know everybody else has got a picture of it. I'd like to pass it around to everybody just to have another look at it. And here's a representation of our houses in our neighborhood. Those are basically a good representation of Cape Cod houses. That's what our neighborhood is. The town of Eastham is written residential bylaws to preserve the charm and the quality and character of our neighborhood. You guys are the stewards of the town. You have a lot of power in how this town is shaped. And to let a 5,000 square foot house go into our neighborhood is just terrible. So I think that's all I have to really say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Bring it back to you.
Hello, I'm Mary Goodyear, and along with my cousin Tom Fellers, we're co-trustees of the Josephine Fellers Realty Trust. And we are responsible for the 34 acres that abut this property to the rear. Where the leach field goes is very, very near the edge of our driveway that drives in from Higgins Road. We have had this family property for 75 years, and we represent the 30 shareholders that are all family in this situation. And certainly having a house that size is kind of unthinkable. We have 3 cottages on our 34 acres that I would expect don't come near the 5,000 or 6,000 square feet that this one building will have. Our houses are very Cape style, very low key, just kind of set in the woods. One of our major management concerns or focuses on our property is to maintain it the best we can in a natural state. We recognize that we have a great deal of wildlife on the property. We have foxes, coyotes, black snakes, box turtles, barred owls, great horned owls, and on and on. And many of them are nocturnal animals. They're nocturnal hunters. And I certainly have a concern about the light situation that is going to impact a great portion of the wildlife that we have on our property, which is a benefit to the whole area. I also am concerned about access, as Arthur had mentioned, about people trying to get access to the beach. The beach is right there. It's hard not to think about just stepping over onto our road and going down, following it down to the beach, using our stairs or using the stairs that are at our end of the Turnip Field Road. So just letting you know that there are 30 more people who aren't here that we represent in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. I'm Chris Salati, the owner of 52 Bow Road. We abut the property to the west. My wife Connie Betterton was here at the last meeting, and she spoke and offered some of our comments and concerns. Initially, I'd like to say that we share all the concerns raised by our neighbors, particularly with regard to the scale, which is obviously much larger than the rest of the homes in the neighborhood. And I think that that's an important consideration for the board. My neighbor, John Heron, did a great job, I thought, summarizing the concerns of the neighborhood, so I won't go into that. I did also appreciate the staff comments that we were able to find for this meeting. tonight. A number of the recommendations that they had, I think, are important to us, and important for any development that happens on the property. And that includes, as some of the folks have mentioned, you know, the lighting next door to us on these big lots. That's a concern. It's very dark back in there. Just to give you an idea in the scale, I think that the latest plan, the house had external lights at about 15 locations. For comparison, our house, which is much smaller, admittedly, we have exterior lights on for 4 locations. And also, I think, as the board staff pointed out, most of the lights included in the lighting plan are large wall sconces. It's not down lighting. We support the staff recommendations that were included in the meeting package to increase the use of down lighting and for timers and other technology to mitigate the impact of some of the light use. Tree cover is also a very important issue for us. We continue to support the statements, both in the site plan and I think some of the staff recommendations to limit tree clearing and minimize it in areas that are adjacent to the abutters. We view that as a positive commitment and would maintain the character of the neighborhood. And then I think finally landscaping, that's also important. We appreciate the staff recommendations regarding additional plant screening, and particularly if there's a pool area, we think that that would help reduce noise and any lighting impacts that we would see from that. You know, we're happy to review. One question I had, I know the staff referenced the landscaping plan, and I think that was raised at some point tonight. I never saw that. I couldn't find it in the staff package. I don't know if that is something that's available to review. Anyway, we're happy to review anything. We're happy to work with anyone on landscaping. Happy to answer any questions. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Wayne Hastings, 20 Bow Road. One thing I forgot to mention is I'm in opposition of the pool being there. Our neighborhood has no pools. And we get noise now from 3 by the Sea, which is just down the road from us. And so now if we have another pool, we're going to be listening to 2 pools making noise. So again, I'm in opposition to a pool in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, Mr. Zender, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Look, I have, and I want to thank everybody behind me for the comments. And the board members, I have a list of responses to all of this that I'm happy to put in front of the board, but I would rather ask the chair for a 5-minute recess to talk to my clients to decide whether or not I do want to make all those responses, or whether we want to ask for continuance, or whether we want to ask the board to take an action tonight. So with your permission, Mr. Chair.
I permit 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Dan, this is Wayne. Just let you know, when they come back from their recess, I will go back to a shot of the meeting room, so you know they are back.
Thank you.
These diagrams, like I was looking at the second story in one group. This is the exterior.
Okay, I assume we're back in session.
Two separate.
Prior to Mr. Zender making his presentation, I'm going to retract a previous comment that I made that it's not likely that we will close the hearing tonight. That statement is no longer in play. We may close the hearing tonight. And given that, I will now ask Mr. Zender what his preference is that he'd like to do.
Well, Mr. Chairman, a couple comments with your latitude. First of all, I'm not going to ask the chair to close the matter for public comment because I am going to ask the board for a continuance, in which case I think keeping the record open may be advisable for the next hearing. I have a couple of responsive comments, and then I would ask the chair, as we leave the meeting tonight, to get as much feedback as we can about the board, about other additional issues that maybe they think we didn't address in this application, so we can come back with additional information. My comments, and I'll keep them really abbreviated for y'all, just because, you know, I'm not here to convince you of anything, but I want to just tell you my thoughts on a couple of things that got said tonight. It's difficult for a board to separate out issues that aren't part of the bylaw. Intended use of the property, whether or not somebody may violate beach access rights or trespass on somebody else's property, things like that. I don't think are part of this examination. I can represent to you clearly that Brian and Brianna's intent is not to rent this house. Their intent is to build this house and sell this house, in which case the people behind me are going to have new neighbors. And we hope and always hope that that relationship is a good relationship. So I can tell you that unequivocally. I made sure I understood from my clients exactly what I was allowed to represent to this board. So their intent is to build and sell the house. To the chair's prefatory comment about subdivision of the lot, I have to say I disagree that 2 3,000 square foot houses are less intensive than one 5,100 square foot house, and I'll give you my my usual speech, which you've all heard, but the people behind me may never have heard, which is that any property on Cape Cod that is used primarily for seasonal purposes, the first bedroom is used 100% of the time the people in residence. And then the second through whatever house, assuming it's not being rented, the second through whatever bedrooms just decreasingly get used. So a 3-bedroom house, especially if it's priced such that a family can move in there and live there year round, is going to be more intensively used. I believe that it's like splitting your hands on a blackjack table. I just believe that multiple dwellings have more intensive use than larger single-family dwellings. Maybe I'm wrong about that. With regard to divisibility of the land, I've looked at the plan of this land. I want to be very clear not to represent to either the board or the people sitting behind me that the property is or is not divisible by subdivision. But I do note, looking at this plan, that it's accessed by way of an easement. It's not accessed by way of direct frontage on a public road, which means that to come in before this board with a subdivision plan to divide this land, I am not sure it would meet the subdivision control regulations for division. I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying I don't want to, because I haven't looked at that. But I believe that division of this lot is not something that was anticipated by either the sellers of the property or by my current owners coming in to buy this property because of the fact that the property doesn't enjoy frontage on a public road or a private road for that sense. It's a dead end access into the property. So I don't believe that. With regard to just going back to statements, and these are difficult statements for boards to make or for other people to make. There's never been a house of this size in town. There's never been a 5,000 square foot house. Putting aside the fact that those statements aren't supported by any examination of the record, when you look at your bylaw, it's pretty clear in section 7.4.3 that a 6,000 square foot site coverage house is available for any lot over 50,000 square feet. So putting aside the question of relative size, which again, I submit is not in the bylaw, it talks about scale. The people went to town meeting and voted that it is permissible in certain contexts to have a 6,000 square foot house in terms of site coverage. That doesn't include sheds under a certain size. It doesn't include other types of things that aren't included, basements, for example. That there clearly was an anticipation at town meeting that you can build a 6,000 square foot house on lots of 50,000 square feet or over. This is an 87,000 square foot lot. So I think the limiting factor on this lot isn't that it's in violation of the bylaw, or in my opinion, even that it doesn't exercise the proper mechanisms for addressing scale, massing, and all that. There's two things. One is it's the biggest house in the neighborhood, which is always a difficulty presented for applicants. And the other, and this is a variable that I have a very difficult time understanding or dealing with. It has to do with a butter response to a project. And I have found in my history of 35 years of doing this, that has to do with visibility of the project to other people, and it has to do with how well organized the abutter groups are in terms of how they care about the project. And those are variables that aren't necessarily tied to the project itself. As one member said, you could build a 5,000 square foot house somewhere else in town and nobody would care. And that has to do with how people see it. So I think it's difficult for boards to properly correlate a butter interaction in terms of their appropriate understanding and application of the bylaw. It does influence what you do emotionally. It influences what you do in terms of understanding what people's concerns are, and it helps you understand exactly what can be done to mitigate a project. But the fact that 10 or 15 or 20 people show up in a room, I don't think is necessarily directly correlated to whether the project is approvable or meets the requirements of the bylaw. Those are all my statements. I am going to ask for a continuance at this point. I don't know what my clients are going to do within the time frame of that continuance, so I'm going to ask for a 60-day. If that's okay? Or is that too long for you guys? You want to go 30? 30. I'm going to ask for a 30-day continuance for this matter, Mr. Copeland.
Okay. Board members, the applicant has asked for a 30-day continuation to our next meeting, which would be February, what's the date, Paul? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, we're just looking on the calendar to get the correct date. I'll just go down.
19.
Oh, that was nobody on calendar.
Check my phone.
Third Wednesday,
The 19th.
19th, February 19th.
Okay, before we vote on this motion, I just want to make it clear that I have not resolved in my mind all other issues that relate to site plan approval. Some of the perhaps mitigation that the applicant may make to make or appease neighbors in terms of visual, in terms of noises, in terms of all the other things, I don't see necessarily that all those issues have been resolved. So when Mr. Zender said, you know, to get the issues out, I'm not prepared to go further on site plan review until we see additional information that he may want to propose for mitigation. So I just want to make that clear. Is there a motion to grant the applicant's request to continuation of case number, hang on, PB 2024-13 to February 19th, 2025?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, any discussion? We can just, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, anybody? Let me pull the board. I can't see from here, so.
Mr. Chair, could I interrupt for just a minute?
Yes.
Just a question through you to Mr. Zender. Will you be able to let us know when you would have the materials before?
Yeah, I mean, we have the normal deadline of 7 days, and we'll try to get them in as early as we can.
7, okay. Just so we can have time to set up.
Yeah, we try our best. So, I mean, it's a fairly short time frame. You know, like if we're talking about 2 weeks.
Definitely.
We may well be requesting a further continuance if we move ahead with the project.
For option, and certainly if you continue it to February, you have the right to be here in February, and if you have to continue it to March, we'll do March. Okay, so the motion, I'm going to poll the board on the vote because the verbal wasn't clear. Dave Hobbs.
Aye.
Michelle.
Aye.
Rob.
Aye.
Brian.
Aye.
Kevin.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay.
I always close with thank you all for your time, regardless of the outcome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I didn't see anything in the packet. Do we have anything further on minutes? Or anything else for tonight, Paul?
Yeah, we did have a set of minutes to be
Hang on.
approved.
November 20th.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we didn't meet in December. That's correct. Anybody have any comments on the minutes as written?
Yeah, I have here. You're missing my name on the red.
Excuse me, folks. Be quiet, please. We're still having a meeting here.
Okay.
Just a minor error.
Make the correction, have Brian's name there on the seated members. Thank you. Any other changes to your minutes?
Just need a motion to approve.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for
Second.
November 20th with the one correction.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? This one we could do aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Paul, anything else?
Just one quick thing, reminder, next week, January 21st, we're having our joint workshop to review the proposed zoning. I have, for the folks that are here tonight, I have some binders that have information. Dan, we will everything's digital, but I can mail the binder down to you. Michelle, if
that would be
I don't
appreciated.
know, Michelle, are you going to be back in town for that, or?
Yeah, I think I can pick it up, Paul.
Okay, if not, let us know.
Okay.
And Rob, if so, you can
I'll
pick
let
it
you know
up.
tomorrow. Thank you.
And that's at 3 o'clock at the library. And that'll be with the zoning board, the zoning task force, and the select board.
And I will be, I'll
And
attend.
we'll have the remote set up.
Thank you.
How long do you anticipate that to be?
That's up to you all. How much questions, how many questions you have? We blocked out a few hours, but just to have the room